welcome to my presentation. So today is June 4th, 2022, and today's presentation is when will humans gain the consciousness abilities of gray aliens? So the write-up I wrote here was turning into orbs, floating, walking through walls, imparting downloads, telepathy, entering dreams, and shape-shifting. All things observed by gray aliens and other alien species. A lot of these abilities seem far out for humans, but most of these are closer to us than we think. So my name is Jeff Selver. I'm the author of The Rising, the Alien Plan to Build an Enlightened City on Planet Earth. So that's my book. It's available at my website, www.jeffselver.com, JEFFSELVER.com. And I had a contact event with gray aliens. This one was from the age of 16, in which I was taken into a dimensional room. And I call it the White Room. And it was on board of a spacecraft, and I was turned into an orb. And it was a absolutely profound experience. And it gave me insight into the dimensional and spiritual nature of the gray aliens. The experience was so profound that it shaped and impacted all of my contact events from that point forward. And it ultimately, the beings used it to impact my life and to make me make certain choices and decisions. And so it really did marry between the kind of their dimensionality and then human spirituality. And so there was kind of a bridge that they were making, and I get to put the pieces together today. So I equate what I experienced in their dimensional nature with what I learned about human spirituality through Vedic philosophy. And I asked the question, what does it take for humans to reach the level of consciousness of gray aliens? Okay, so this is the outline. I'll start with the paradigm humans are stuck in. God is a tree. Then I'll talk about the self and my experience in the White Room. Go into consciousness and the experience of no space and no time. An expanded view of time, which I think pertains to a lot of what the beings are able to do. Telepathy and downloads. And lastly, there'll be an exercise, and then we'll run a Q&A. So when will humans gain the consciousness abilities of gray aliens? So to start our conversation about the consciousness abilities of gray aliens, we first have to set the playing field. To have a conversation about the beings, we have to accept a truth about the nature of reality. In today's presentation, I accept certain things about the nature of the universe to be very real. What is obvious to me is to understand the beings, we have to accept a certain truth about the nature of reality. And this is because the beings are at the point of full utilization of this other level of reality. For humans in our present 21st century, we are finally beginning to provide hard proof for this other level of reality. It's there if you look for it. You can also prove to yourself this level of reality exists. This is called subjective evidence, confirming for you that in fact, the reality we know is not exactly as we think it to be. Ideas like synchronicities, how certain meaning-making events are so connected that they break all statistical probabilities. The emphasis lies on the word meaningful. It occurs when an inwardly perceived event, such as a dream, vision, premonition, thought, or mood, is seen to have a correspondence to external reality. The inner and the outer coincide, bringing meaning to your life. Presently, Carl Jung's concept of synchronicity could be explained by quantum reality's observer effect. And here you have a paper talking about Carl Jung's synchronicity and the quantum entanglement. The experience of God, which is now being measured in the brain. Experiences like unity are measurable, and they activate parts of the brain otherwise never used. And contemplating the abstract concept of God puts parts of the brain together that otherwise never would come together. Remote viewing, past lives, and telepathy. Largely, these ideas suggest an undiscovered truth about humans. For this conversation today, though, we bring it up to a level where these are all real. These ideas then become the grounding to understand the beings, and this is where we jump off from. So of all my 26 contact events, there was a subtle thread, a theme that seemed to permeate throughout my story. I couldn't help but notice the connection between the aliens and our human indigenous cultures.
Give a shit.
The gray alien I dealt with felt like an elder. She had a chiefdom to her, combined with a feeling of belonging to a highly advanced technological civilization. I've heard from other contactees that the beings have told them that they are cosmic shamans. Even the rising, what my story is about, was a rite of passage indicative of what's called a walkabout in the Australian Aboriginals. A walkabout is when an adolescent male is left to live in the wilderness on their own up to 6 months to make this spiritual and traditional transition into manhood. So I want to talk about something called a worldview. That's going to help our understanding about this. So I grabbed this from this Indigenous corporate training website written by Indigenous people. I thought this was really well written and will help us in the moving forward of this topic. A worldview can pertain to an individual, group, or society. Overall, a worldview is a set of beliefs and values that are honored and withheld by a number of people. A worldview includes how the person or group interacts with the world around them, including land, animals, and people. Every person and society has a worldview. Many societies pass on their worldview to their children and ensure worldview continuity. As people interact and learn from one another, it is not uncommon for them to acquire the beliefs of other worldviews. Worldviews evolve as people and societies evolve. That's from Leroy Littlebear. And I want to just break down this description, which I thought was really helpful. So there are 8 differences between the Indigenous and Western worldview. In the Indigenous worldview, it is a spiritually orientated society. Systems are based on belief and spiritual world, while the Western worldview is scientific and skeptical, requiring proof as a basis of belief. In the Indigenous worldview, there are many truths. Truths are dependent upon individual experiences, while in the Western worldview, there is only one truth based on science or Western-style law. In the Indigenous worldview, societies operate in state of relatedness. Everything and everyone is related. There is real belief that people, objects, and the environment are all connected. Law, kinship, and spirituality reinforce this connectedness. Identity comes from connections. In the Western worldview, it is compartmentalized society, becoming more so. In the Indigenous worldview, the land is sacred and usually given by a creator or supreme being. In the Western worldview, the land and its resources should be available for development and extraction for the benefit of humans. In the Indigenous worldview, time is nonlinear, cyclical in nature. Time is measured in cyclical events. The seasons are central to this cyclical concept. In the Western worldview, time is usually linearly structured and future-orientated. The framework of months, years, days, etc. reinforces the linear structure. In the Indigenous worldview, there is a feeling comfortable is measured by the quality of your relationships with people. While in the Western worldview, feeling comfortable is related to how successful you feel you have been in achieving your goals. In the Indigenous worldview, human beings are not the most important in the world. In the Western worldview, human beings are the most important in the world. In the Indigenous worldview, amassing wealth is important for the good of the community. And for the Western worldview, amassing wealth is for personal gain. If we believe that we are all one, that we are connected, then we are better able to equip to handle something that we don't understand, such as witnessing a dimensional alien creature. You're going to believe at the core of that thing, there is something similar to you. When we believe in mythology, then we extend our level of belief. You prepare yourself for an expansion of ideas and concepts. Maybe that there are other realms and other types of intelligent beings, and that we are interconnected with them. In the modern day, we think of myth as belonging to the realm of fiction. We believe only reason, logic, and science, or what is called the domain of logos, can reveal to us the truths of the world. But as Jung writes, myth is not fiction. It consists of facts that are continually repeated and can be observed over and over again. Yet both logos and mythos are realms for discovering truth. It's just that these truths they reveal are of different nature. Science teaches us the neurological correlates behind the phenomena of pain. Mythos teaches us how to meaningfully endure pain. Science teaches us how to cure sickness. Mythos teaches us how to meaningfully cope with loss and death. Or as Karen Armstrong explains, logos, or reason, is the pragmatic mode of thought that enables people to function effectively in the world. People have always needed logos to make an efficient weapon, organize their societies, or plan an expedition. Logos is continually on the lookout for new ways of controlling the environment, and is essential to the survival of our species. But logos has its limitations. Good at manipulating the world and making us powerful, it does not contribute to any broader understanding of the meaning of our lives. For that, people turned to mythos. So we can gain exposure to the realm of mythos through the great works of literature. But the great religions are the ultimate source of this wisdom. For the primary purpose of religion, from time immemorial, has been to help us cope with the existential predicament and to find meaning in life, even if this purpose has at times been corrupted by religion and is organized in institutional forms. Not only Christianity with its symbols of salvation, writes Young, but all religions, including the primitive, with their magical rituals, are forms of psychotherapy which treat and heal the suffering of the soul and the suffering of the body caused by the soul. For myths, like dreams, are encoded in symbolic form, and so they point in the direction of truths that are not fully comprehensible, but by the conscious intellect. We like to imagine that something which we do not understand does not help us in any way, but that is not always so. Myths have a direct effect on the unconscious, regardless of what is understood or not. The fact that its repeated telling has not become obsolete can be explained by its usefulness. So, when we remove ideas of unity and interconnectedness from our perspective and worldview, we also remove them from our experience as well. Yet the reality of them is still there. Remember how I started the presentation, showing you the proof that many of the larger consciousness experiences, such as remote viewing and past lives, are very real. It's just we don't acknowledge it. They are still a part of us. It's just that we have conditioned ourselves to not focusing on them, and therefore we believe they are not part of our reality. And so, when the time comes to face something that is other dimensional, it puts us into a place of the unknown, and we become terrified of it. What needs to be emphasized is what you're scared of is yourself, because the entity is opening doors of your expanded consciousness that you have not opened yet, realms of your mind that have long been rejected. You are projecting the unknown of yourself onto the entity. Projection is one of the commonest psychic phenomena. Everything that is unconscious in ourselves, we discover in our neighbor, and we treat him accordingly. With a perspective of unity, one can adapt to something that they don't understand, while in a fierce state of projection, we cannot. This is the paradigm humans are stuck in. Okay, so this section I'm going to call God is a Tree. All of this is to help us put together the pieces of some of the things that I experienced while on the craft. So I've heard before from contactees that the beings can give visions of God. Contactees are sometimes given the bigger picture. And that's what happened to me. Not just in the White Room when I was 16 in my first contact event, but when the memories came out in 2019, it was combined with my whole encompassing spiritual understanding and experience up to that point in my life. And I had a vision of God when it all kind of culminated. So that's what this section is. And it will help us understand and move forward here. So I call this section, God is a Tree. Now to start, the beings gave me an understanding of our consciousness in a download, which I call the Mystic Book. So in the back of my book is a download called the Mystic Book. And they give a description of consciousness. And it was when I was translating the Mystic Book, It was telepathic signatures. It was impressions and feelings. And I received a distinct impression about what this was. And so these are my words, quantum dimensional consciousness, to translate what I experienced from this book that they gave me. And so the detail of that description is here. So when I say quantum physics demonstrates the strange nature of the basic properties of the universe. At its core is in no space and no time, or could be considered all space and all time. Space and time is relative to the observer. This equates to the Vedic concept of the absolute, as in absolute space and time. This is the feeling, an aspect of consciousness that is in a realm of no space and no time, in timelessness. Okay, so I'm going to get you to do a very small and brief exercise, okay? So I want you to close your eyes. Close your eyes and think of the sofa in your living room. In your imagination, see the sofa in your living room. See its color. Now seat yourself on the sofa. Where is it the most uncomfortable place? Just put yourself wherever it's the most uncomfortable, put yourself there. Feel the discomfort. Then go to the most comfortable part of the sofa and sit down and feel the fabric there. Now get up from the sofa and stand up. Now open your eyes. Did you see this imagination in the past? Did you see this imagination in the future? Did you see this imagination in the present? You didn't even see it in the present. In that moment, there is no present. There is no present. By the time I say present, present is gone. This is timelessness within the imagination. So simply put, quantum means the experience of no space and no time, timelessness. This is our consciousness. This is your no space, no time self. This is the quantum feeling of timelessness. In that place, you can see other places. The place that we just went to, you can see other places and other times. And it is not just fanciful imagination. The other section of this word is dimensional. So the dimensions experienced by consciousness can be changed within the properties of space and time by levels and degrees, and can be divided without taking away from the whole. So we'll go into this. We'll explain what this means here. Consciousness is the awareness you experience in its purest, unconditional form. Soul isn't some far-off energy. It is the awareness you use to perceive the world around you and the energy you use to move your body. Thus, quantum dimensional consciousness. So the body that you are has an ethereal body with a history beyond this lifetime. That could have been in another form before that. Could be another human form, but not necessarily. You could have been in another dimensional form, or even an alien. These are what some people talk about in the field, that they were an alien in their past lives. Only you can know these. The ethereal body is like a cocoon or gel produced by the higher self, being developed or grown over too many lifetimes to count. Your higher self uses the same imprint over and over again, the same you, the same body, the ethereal body. You can have damage happen to this body that is still in the imprint of the future body in another life. It is literally the same cocoon, the same energy, the ethereal body being used and used and used. You are an energy form that is being used by the higher self to manifest into the physical world. From this ethereal body, we have a higher self that is the one manifesting this ethereal body, creating it, organizes the plan and purpose of its manifestation in the physical realm. It is, in essence, the root energy of the awareness of the ethereal body. So the tree is a good metaphor for this relationship between the ethereal self, which is our energy self, which is you. You are the awareness you're using is all coming from your ethereal self, and then the higher self, but also to understand the grand unifying awareness, which we can call God. So you and me are like the leaf. You have a leaf here, leaf of the tree, and each of us that manifests in physical reality is like a leaf. The higher self is the stem. So your higher self would be the stem here. You have a you in the afterlife realm or in this other realm, and it's producing you, the physical, ethereal self that's put into the physical body. But then if you see, keeps going up. You are connected to another stem, another higher self. But from here, there are versions. This is nature. So like a single stem can have two leaves. You could have a higher self producing multiple full body awarenesses in physical reality. And sometimes, without your knowing, someone you know in your life might be an offshoot of your higher self. That is in this lifetime with you. It could be your spouse, or a parent, or a best friend. Only you can know this. Now it gets complex because this higher self can be creating offshoots in other places of space and also in other times. Remember, this realm of the higher self is timelessness, no space and no time. So if you see, the stem keeps moving upwards and upwards until it makes it to a tree. Now, when you step back, you see a truth of reality. Is the leaf separate from the tree? No, that would be ridiculous. The leaf is not separate from the tree. That is the same with you and me. And we fight for our individuality, our own individual identity, saying, no, God is not real. I'm not a part of the whole. But when we step back, it's obvious that is in fact exactly what is going on. We are all one. Now, here is a great mystery to life. The tree is rooted in soil and likewise is in contact with other trees, which we call a forest. These roots connect to other trees. This metaphor is the same. God, the living universe, which is you, is equally connected to a forest of other gods. The whole thing just keeps going up as equally that it keeps going inward. I'm going to back up here. Now, every stem, right from the higher self that is producing you and all the way up, is using space and time differently, creating variations that are beyond our mind and very complex and maybe endless in variation. Space expands not just outwards, but also inwards, meaning there are other types of space that our higher self can create bodies to exist in. I was shown in the white room that the universe is in fact layers of land stacked on top of one another. Thinner versions of space can exist within the same space. That is synonymous with string theory and with a section of string theory called compactification, where that is part of the theory that dimensions are literally sitting on top of one another. And that is what I was shown in the white room. Time moves forward for us, but within an absolute of space-time, all points of time can exist at any given time, meaning there are other times, future and past, that our higher selves can create bodies to exist in. The beings might be showing us that there are other ways to experience time, which we'll get into. So for those who know my book, I have a whole section dedicated to a past life awareness. And the way I gain access to that past life awareness is not me thinking about the past. It is me connecting to the present moment of that past self. I am feeling the present moment experience of that past self. For that past life awareness, he's thinking of himself as living in the present. And that's where all actions are buried, is within the present moment experiences. So I'm tuning into my higher self currently living out that life, not going into some idea of the memories. I'm not feeling memories. I'm feeling present moment experiences that exist in the present moment, yet in an almost kind of another dimensional realm, which is the past for us. So that's just a connecting piece here. Nature, even in all its dimensional forms, lives by the property of random organization. The idea that nature reflects patterns, yet none of them will ever exactly repeat. No snowflake is the same, no tree is ever the same, no spot in space is ever the same, no time is ever the same. And this is true even of you. Of all the massive variation, the amount of variation in the universe still created something as unique as you. Your brain, personality, historical makeup, and added into the mix the history of your ethereal self that has been living other lives. So life is a tree of infinite variation of space, time, and consciousness. Yet the truth about what each part of the tree is doing, with all the choice of variation of space and time, is reuniting itself with a larger part of itself at every step. It's what you're doing now. In our world, this is the process of discovering oneself and learning about our grander abilities of consciousness. We are learning more about ourselves, expanding our sense of consciousness, which is reuniting us with a larger part of ourselves. This means when you come to this dimension fully, you will experience a profound love. All of this dimensionality is existing in a purity of love, in unconditional love. Why? Because unity is the experience of being a part of something, one with something, with which knows your true identity as one with it, even if you don't know it. So the line, love is all there is the facts. And I can only emphasize to people, for those who seek spirituality, that there's all this other stuff that goes on with consciousness and abilities, but I can only tell you from my personal experience that their truth is that all of this dimensionality, all these abilities, it's really all about coming back to love, and that this higher love, this tree love, if you will, this unconditional connecting love. And because simply you're a part of the cog, and that's why, because you're a part of all of it. So here's the problem. Were you able to comprehend anything I said? Right? Isn't this the issue? All of this is beyond the brain. What does infinity feel like? Think about that for a second. What does infinity feel like? What does it feel like to be unconditionally loved? The answer to these won't be in your mind. They will be in your consciousness. Consciousness is modified by the mind. Here's the big picture, right? We have this purity of self, and we got this tool that's modifying it, changing it so it tries to understand the nature of reality. The brain is a repository of past information it has gained from the five senses. The brain also allows us to create a point of focus from all the options within the universe, creating definition, structure, limiting the world around us. We bring to life that which we focus on. So awareness, the power of consciousness coming through the mind, is akin to the analogy of the sun and a magnifying glass. When the sunlight is spread out, it hits all the surfaces evenly. But when it is focused through a magnifying glass, It can be so concentrated, it can start a fire. It is undisputed by neuropsychologists and philosophers that the type and extent of attention we pay changes the nature of the world that we experience. I need to be emphasizing that this is the key to all of this, is the brain, its relationship to this truth of who we are, and then we have to deal with this tool, this brain. And we have to be clear and understand how it shapes the experiences that we have and modifies the experience of consciousness. So our brain, which we have used to create our identity of ourselves, and in turn has created our worldview, has no capacity to understand exactly what we are. It cannot hold it. It is beyond the mind, and therefore the mind will resist it. The mind does not like things that are beyond it. So to hold ideas and concepts beyond the mind, we allow ourselves to project them outwards. First, with the image of the grand spiritual teachers of our history, or present if you know them. You project outwards all the abilities of God, unconditional love, unlimited knowing, that is knowing beyond space and time. But as you use the image of the other, what you are in fact doing is experiencing those qualities within. You are experiencing yourself as God. So when we project our higher self with a teacher, we then make space to experience within us the higher self. After time and experience, we learn to hold these qualities within ourselves. This is why we use images. It is called the transcendental mirror. The higher person, the higher consciousness human, the spiritual teacher, these high-level beings who are in our history are our transcendental mirrors. And practices such as Tai Chi and meditation, these help us experience consciousness beyond the mind. So this is where it all comes down to. I did this big build up because I need to emphasize over and over again, without these, it is impossible to train the mind to experience something beyond it. You cannot experience something beyond the mind with the mind. You have to experience pure consciousness beyond the mind first. Then over time, the mind can become conditioned to letting go to the experience of pure consciousness. Otherwise, we're always using this limited box to try and determine and try and understand the nature of consciousness. Yet it is beyond the mind. Okay. So now that we have laid the framework of consciousness and its relationship to the mind, we are going to explore what others and myself have experienced with the beings. So when my memories were first coming out of the first contact event I had, so my story goes that in July 1st, 2019, was the day I confirmed for myself that I actually had alien contact. I actually posted a video on my YouTube channel that has me, it's the day I actually learned, and I was filming myself kind of casually with my phone in my hand while I went to the location of a contact event. And I could feel that my memory had been, fudged or played with, and that something had happened there that was outside my normal memory. And I kind of I'd been seeing UFOs, so I'd confirmed for myself that I had alien contact at that point. And there's a weird thing about alien contact, and when people are having alien contact, there's synchronicities that kind of happen in their lives, right? There's meaning-making events kind of happen. Whitley Strieber actually in Communion documents synchronicities about him and his dad in this kind of scenario where His mom, he didn't know the role his mom played in his dad's death, and he had a synchronicity about it all around alien contact. It was really strange. And so these synchronicities can happen. And I had one when my memories were coming out of the white room. So I'd already had the flashbacks of the white room, and I'd already done a hypnotic regression. And then here I was with my wife, and we went to a light store, right? Like a store where you'd buy lamps and lights. And so we walked into one room, and she was asking about some type of bulb. And I decided, hey, I'm going to go over to that room over there. And as I walked into the room, its brightness, its bright whiteness, right? How bright white I had a flashback in the room, like of the white room while I was in there. And then I couldn't help but notice these little orbs, and just the sight of these in this bright white room, I had a complete flashback of the white room. It was a weird synchronicity because I was coming out with the memories at that time. And so I went and I took pictures of it, and it's small stuff, but for me, it was the real deal because I kept having these flashbacks of the experience there. So the white room would become the foundation of my entire contact events. And presently, my experience in the white room gives me incredible understanding on the nature of spirit and consciousness, and what's true for consciousness. There is a concept called a Kundalini rising. Kundalini is a Sanskrit word, Kunda meaning coiled. The concept is that there is an energy called Shakti at the base of the spine. And but this energy is our consciousness. It's still us, right? It's our ability, it's our energy spread out in the body. And so it gets spread out, and they've kind of identified this spot along the spine, and it's called the Shakti. So when the beings, or a human for that matter, turn into an orb, they are through and through collapsing, condensing, or rising this energy. So this is the same with the beings, hands down. I actually am not clear that they spread out their energy the same way the human does. But what's obvious to me is, in this way, humans, when the energy is spread out, it's kind of like a prism. So this would be our true form, condensed and pure, like a pure orb. And then the human body seems to be the one that kind of spreads us out. Though while still in the human body, you actually can still collapse it, the energy. And that is what a Kundalini rising is. So the act of rising or condensing our own energy, of having a Kundalini rising, is our own process of coming to wholeness, bringing all of ourselves together, bringing the self, all of our self together. When we are in this state, we experience bliss. Our source connection, our root consciousness. The beings definitely have displayed this in my contact events, as they have been seen as orbs in other people's contact events also. So for me, that's just a fact that when these beings are in this state, they are in this heightened, condensed consciousness state that is similar, if not exactly the same as humans. That's what the white room was showing me, that when they're in this state and we are in this state, we are one and the same. There's no alien, there's no human. We are exactly the same thing. We are exactly the same creature. We are exactly the same species. It is when we put ourselves into physical bodies that we end up looking the same, looking different and acting different. But otherwise, as true core energies, we are exactly the same and have the same experience of having Kundalini risings, and then kind of having the bliss experience while we're in that state. The other thing about the white room, the closer we are to the root of our consciousness, the more we will experience its purity. When we say purity of consciousness, we do not mean moral purity. We mean pure as in unconditioned by the mind. That is why Jesus said you have to be like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven, which is the absolute. The joy I experienced in the white room is literally indescribable, but to do my best, it is summarized with these images. The play between two species, apparently when two different species of animals bond. Dog and a deer, that's a lion over there, that's a pit bull and a lion, or it's a pug and a lion. I watched a documentary on two animals so it's actually very fascinating, right? The internet has done this, where people film animal relationships that are so unique, right? A deer and a dog. In this documentary, they had a bear and a tiger. They had a cheetah and a dog. And so what they made a documentary around it, because the internet kind of made the focus of these kind of unique relationships, that animal behavior specialists decided to, hey, let's make a documentary and do kind of talk psychology about what we think is going on here. And fascinating enough, when animals of different species bond, they focus on play. It is a really interesting. It's because the variation, right? The way the variation, the difference between the different communicating, the different behaviors, the different looks, and yet they bond out of this kind of like similarity when they're innocent enough, when they're young enough, that when they grow up, they keep the bond, but they enjoy the kind of difference between each other, and then they play with each other all the time, and they grow up playing with each other. This is an adult dog and adult deer, who were both babies at the time when they met each other. And so it's all very fascinating. And that is the exact experience I had in the White Room, where we were two species. I was super excited. They were super excited. And this play is actually seemed normal for them. That was the other part of it. This room seemed to create a play experience and kind of play spirit experience. So this play between me and the beings, just like these animals in play, was a big part of my experience in the White Room. Feeling unity in the White Room was the exact same feeling of group freedom and bonding that would be akin to a rave or a festival, where everyone is freely dancing, expressing their souls and spirits purely. I was at English Bay, and a band here in Vancouver, and a band was playing, and they were like these hippie guys, and they were, everything was like really grassroots, and these kind of hippie-ish people were dancing. And I had a flashback of the White Room in it, this freedom they had, this kind of just joyful letting go freedom. And again, that kind of play, joyful, collective unity freedom. And then on top of the White Room was this experience of purity, of childlike laughter, friendliness, happiness, and joy. This child self is in each of us. So this stuff is just really powerful, right? This is, they have a room to induce in anybody the true nature of what you are, the true nature of what all of us are. And yet what's obvious is when you study this, it's clear that humans are missing most of this. And then we create all this kind of psychological dysfunction from our lack of it. And the idea is they have a room that gives you the core consciousness abilities that are core consciousness experiences that you're looking for, that we're all looking for as humans. We're all looking for this. We're all looking for that freedom of play, that freedom of unity and collective nature. And we're all looking for that childlike freedom and that childlike innocence, a childlike imagination. We talked about mythology before. And it's epic, because this is who and what every single one of us actually is. We are not aliens, we're not humans, we're not this, we're not that. We are all this at the core of everything and what we are. Play, unity, collective, and childlike freedom and spirituality. So you have to come back to when you saw things in wonder, when you were creative, when you believed in the imagination. Now, from everything I've explained, the distinct difference between the beings and us humans is that when all of these are experienced, all of those things I mentioned, we are in a state of complete or whole consciousness. Meaning, if we are not these, we are looking for them and seeking them outside of us. The beings are in a fulfilled and completed state of consciousness by comparison. This state of consciousness is so foreign to humans, people often dismiss this level of self-fulfillment as fanciful. But this state of consciousness is akin to the masters and the enlightened ones on our planet. As I have a guru, it's part of my story. I have a spiritual teacher, a guru, and that's the comparison. He's living in this completed and fulfilled state. So until we are in a fulfilled state, we are always looking on the outside for that fulfillment. We're always trying to fill the gap. Until we find ourselves, we project outwards looking for ourselves. When we are closer to the root awareness of ourselves, we become more in line with our universal awareness. We get on its level with the full ability to manipulate it. This is the quantum consciousness aspect of nature. This completed state, this raised state of consciousness, adds to the consciousness abilities the beings are capable of. So in summary for this section here, we are a quantum dimensional consciousness. We all have the capability of rising our kundalinis. Purity of consciousness, unconditioned by the mind, is our truth. Again, we're not talking about morality. There's no morality. There's just truthfully what you are in your purest state. A fulfilled state of consciousness is one with play, community, connection, unity, togetherness, and childlike purity, freedom, and security. Coming back to wholeness is coming back to love. At our core, love is what we are. So experiencing or seeking the above states can help open the doors to experiencing these next abilities, which are often observed with the beings.